It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Friday, February 9th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that knows sometimes the wins aren't pretty, but they're still wins.
Right now, I'm giving more of an effort than Winnipeg.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. And we are at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter as well. You can find us over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. A bit of a shuffle prior to last night's game starting. Nick Delorier scratched. It looked like Zamula was going to get scratched, but then he was back in as the 7th D in this one. Ali Luxell was also scratched from this one. It looks like he's getting sent back to the Phantoms, but the official transaction hasn't gone through, so he was listed as a scratch in the game.
It's too bad. It'd have been nice for him to get a game before he goes back, but whatever.
Yeah, and Risto was out of this one as well. I think that it was interesting that they still went with 11-7 when all things are considered. But man, that first period was a delightful period of hockey across the board. They were just firing on all cylinders. You have Travis Konechny with that Gordie Howe in one period. I
Yeah,
mean, it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
no question, it was a lot of fun. I mean, I gotta tell you, that first goal that Brossoit let up, like even Brian Boucher was like, doesn't he even move over and try and stop it? Like he went down and he never even saw where the puck was. It was odd, but hey, I give the Flyers credit. Like you said, they fired on all cylinders. They were way more engaged than Winnipeg was. That Winnipeg was just like they were just getting beat all over the ice.
Yeah, it was not the Winnipeg Jets that I expected to see
No.
in this game
Or
at
maybe
all
it
in
is
that
because that's
first
why they're
period.
on a losing streak. Like, who knows? Hockey's a weird game, man. I mean, you just never know.
Yeah, and, John Tortorella was bang on that it was really important that the Flyers get off to a good start in this game and score early,
Yeah.
especially at home. They absolutely needed that big lead, considering how things kinda turned a little bit later in the game because you knew, like, the Winnipeg Jets were not gonna give up on this game,
No, I
and they
mean,
didn't
they
until the
need the point.
very end.
Yeah, I mean, like everybody else, they need the points. Yeah, it was a situation of definitely too little, too late, but it was a situation with the Flyers. Like, hey, you played your game at the beginning. Uh, some weird plays, they got rewarded, and that's really all that matters. It's like, if you're near the puck, you're going to get rewarded.
Yeah, I think, it was really interesting to look at the stats and how things shifted as the game went on, and I'm sure that's why John Tortorella is probably mad, just because of how, that first period effort made all the difference, and Sam Ersson, which we will get to,
Yeah.
but, I think that, you know, in the second period, expected goals for percentage was under 20% for the Flyers. I mean, that is brutal.
Yeah, I would have hated to give Torts that sheet. I'd have been like, here and run out of the room. Like I just would. I probably would have flown it in on like a paper airplane, so I wouldn't even have to look at them.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, and, and I did think, as the game progressed, the roles kind of reversed between the 2 teams, because in that first period, which was incredible, I think the Flyers were making really smart plays,
They were.
and, the Jets were discombobulated, making too many passes. There was definitely a couple of chances the Jets had early
Yeah, they had
on
a
in the
few
game.
early. They were controlling the ice very early on, and then never
Yeah.
seemed to find it after that. Like the defense just was dead.
Yeah, and then,
And the
you
Flyers
know,
were getting
late
2-on-1s and all kinds of breaks.
yeah, and then, like, later in the game, the Flyers were doing too many passes and, like,
Yes.
a little discombobulated. So, I think, the upshot here is thank you, Sam Ersson, and I'm so bummed he could not get that shutout, but I think that there was a lot on his shoulders, and especially after, having to weather the storm in the first period of the Florida game like that and having to settle things down for the team. He had to essentially do that again in this game to a large degree for a good chunk of the second period.
Yeah, no question, and he looked really calm at times, and he was making the good saves. I think they were doing a pretty good job uh, clearing the net. Mark Stahl, who hasn't played in a long time, actually had a pretty good game.
Yeah.
I don't think he's shaven all year, but he had a good game. The
No, it is so obvious that it's him out there. Like, if there was no number on his jersey, you would
It
just
wouldn't
know.
matter anymore, right? Like it's just
Yeah.
the guy who looks like Paul Bunyan. Yeah, that's Mark Stahl. But yeah, it was Urson looked really good, and yeah, good for him. It's a shame that he didn't get the shutout that happens sometimes. But uh, hey, it's the way it goes. But at least yeah, he did his job.
He absolutely did. It was a huge game of block shots from both teams. I think, we'd seen a little bit more of a balanced Flyers where they didn't have to depend on that as much over a stretch. But this is just one of those games where, like, both teams, that's all they did. It seemed like defensively.
It did, it did. Luckily, the Flyers didn't have to count on the power play. Mm.
Yeah, that was something we talked about that the Flyers were really gonna have to take advantage of the power play. They did not, and, like, especially when they didn't score on that 5 on 3, I was just like, "Oh, no, like, this is not
That's a
good. This
bad
is
thing
not."
to not do.
Yeah, and I think that, again, they just got this win on the back of Sam Ersson, and I think in the 3rd period, while, I think the Jets got a ton of chances, it was a much lower event period than the 2nd period was, so
I
they
think
had a
so.
chance to settle a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do think, the defense did enough to do that, and then Ursa was able to do his thing. So I do think
Mhm.
that that's fair that you say that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, other than that Kyle Connor goal, which,
Right.
again, so bummed out about that. But, "'Twas not meant to be." Yeah. In the meantime, the other elements of it that were fun, that fight between Travis Konechny and Neil Pionk,
Yeah,
actually,
I
I
mean,
kind of enjoyed that one. I don't usually,
I
but,
didn't not enjoy it. I just think, boy, you don't want him off the ice for 5 minutes as good as he is. And
yeah.
luckily he did come back and score, but man, it's like Pionk's an okay player, but they just got Travis Konechny off the ice. That was an opportunity for them, really.
It was. It really was. But and Konechny, I think, got lucky in a lot of ways with his goal, because it was that
Yeah.
weird bounce that
Yes.
happened. But nonetheless, I thought the overall effort on that play was really good, and
It
they
was.
maintained pressure in front of the net. And that's something we've been talking about too, is that's a high danger scoring area for them. And if they can get a crowd in front of the net and kind of force a scramble for the other team, they're gonna find a way to get one in. And
Yeah. I mean, those kinds of chances, as the season rolls on here, you're not gonna get as many prime chances as you maybe got in the first half, so you are gonna have to get some ugly goals.
yeah, I think so. But again, I think that puts the Flyers in a really good position right now. And I think next week's going to be a really tough week. We're going to talk about that later in the show. But in the meantime, we have the Seattle Kraken as the next opponent for the Flyers. We're going to talk about that coming up next.
Passion, drive, and patience what brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need and the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers.
On Monday's show, of course, we will recap this Flyers versus Kraken game that we're about to talk about. We'll have our nemesis of the week, and all next week we'll have the activities leading up to the Stadium Series game. So, looking forward to all of that. Meanwhile, the Seattle Kraken, when last we saw them, the Kraken won 2-1. It was one of the last game before New Year's, maybe the 29th
Yeah.
of December. And if we recall, the Kraken tied it up in the third period and wound up winning in overtime. It was a pretty brutal loss, and that it kind of deflated the Flyers a little bit at that point. So I think it's just really important to kinda get back on it against the Kraken this time around, and I think there's a prime opportunity here because for the Kraken, this is their first game back from their bye week, which was after the All-Star break. So, they're gonna be a little bit rusty, and the Flyers need to take advantage of that.
Yeah, they'll definitely be rusty for a little bit to start, but I'm sure Dave Haxtell is going to drum it into them that they got to give a full effort here and play a full game because they need the points too, right? And
They do.
I feel like Haxtell is the one similar thing to John Tortorella. Haxtell usually has his team ready for the most part, and I think they play a similar game. And I think the difference here with the teams is they're going to play pretty physical on the blue line, especially with guys like Alexiak in there. So um, that'll be interesting. I can't believe what the Kraken's fourth line is, just because you see Beniers there and Jaden Schwartz used to be a first or a second liner at some point. I like Ty Carte a lot. Um, Guys who have killed the Flyers in the past, certainly Bjorkstrand and Tolvanen on the same line, um, are, are two of them. It's an
Right.
interesting team. I mean, they do skate well. They do play very responsible hockey. So I think this is
Yeah.
one where you're not going to see a ton of mistakes from the opponent.
Yeah, I mean, and that is the Dave Haxtell way, as we know. And I think, the other thing here is that the game that, the Flyers lost to the Kraken was part of a hot streak that the Kraken had been going on late
Yes, you're right.
December, early January. So they had a 9-game winning streak leading up to January 13th, but since then they've gone 2-5-1 and have cooled off tremendously. And they're in 5th in the Pacific division right now, and they're still behind the Kings, who had been in sort of a free fall for a while there. But I think that, like you said, this is a very important time for the Kraken in terms of making the playoffs or not making the playoffs. Like, they have to make their case for it over the next 2 to 3 weeks, I would say, to kind of stake their claim. Are they in this race or are they not?
Right. And I kind of think, I don't know, if it were me, I would put the cord in. I don't know what they're going to do. Um,
Yeah.
I'm not sure
I'm
how
sure
they'll.
they will because 'cause they're just coming back.
Right. So it seems like that, but again, you never know. Some we you try and figure out these teams with the goalies, and
Yeah, I
sometimes
think we've been wrong 2 games in a
we've been
row,
wrong for a
so
little bit here. So
yeah,
I don't feel
yeah,
as confident. We used to nail it. Now we
I
don't.
know. That's true.
So I don't feel as confident. I'll say that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'd put my money on them putting Decord in, but then, what do we know?
Yep.
Anyway,
Well said.
yeah. I think that, you talked about their fourth line a little bit with, some skill guys like Matty Beniers and Jaden Schwartz on that line. And you look at their lineup and it's missing a notable name of Shane Wright.
Yeah.
He was demoted to the minors on December 16th, which was, a little bit before the Flyers played them the last time. And I thought for sure back then that by now he would maybe be back up, but
What
he's
if he does
not.
join them? I know, but you never know. He could join them on the trip. Like, he could end up being there. Probably won't, but you never know.
Yeah, well, and the Kraken have made a couple of forward call-ups since then, and he was not
Yeah.
one of those guys. There was at least 2 other guys that had got call-ups, from Coachella Valley, and he was not it. So that's a little bit surprising to me.
Yeah. He's
Um,
young, though. There's a lot of career in him. So,
yeah, we'll see, but I just think that, with all the hype behind him, he's had a rough go of it. So I certainly hope he gets back on it and gets some opportunities with the Kraken. Um, I think looking at the Kraken overall, they are just a slightly better than average team.
right.
And in everything. They're not great at anything
No.
particularly. Their PK is 19th in the NHL. Their power play is like almost exactly mid-league. The one thing that the Flyers are better than them at, surprisingly, is face-offs. The Kraken just don't have a solid presence at the dot.
Well, yeah, they don't, you could look at their lineup and see that they don't really have like that overwhelming number one center. I mean, McCann's a good player, but he's not known for faceoffs. Wenberg
Right.
actually is probably better on faceoffs. So who
Yeah, and
knows how
who's
that,
their second line
yeah,
center.
and he's their second liner. So who knows how that's actually going to work out. Weird to see Yanni Gord on that third line, but that's a talented third line. So yeah, it'll be a
Yeah.
weird game. I expect this one to be a weird one. I do.
Yeah, and, we're looking at lines from January 30th, their last game before the break. They could switch things around,
They could, because we're probably
significantly.
100% wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, like Oliver Bjorkstrand, who was just in the All-Star game, is on their third line, which that's, like, weird to me as well.
Who knows? Like, with Dave Haxtell, I don't even think about it. I just, like, whatever. Nothing would surprise me.
Yeah, now as far as the Flyers goalie situation in this game, it's really interesting to me because, like, I look at kind of the road ahead for the next several games. And I think, like, logically, it would make sense to put Peterson in this
They're
game
not
against
gonna,
the
though.
Kraken, but they're not going to. And I think they're going to wait until the Arizona game to
Right.
do that.
Yeah. I think they are. I think that's what they're waiting for.
Yeah,
I'm with
I
you on
just
that.
think there's no way around that. So I think with Sam Ersson being as busy as he was, I think in the last couple games, I hope he has enough left in the tank for this game because he's going to face a decent amount of shots here.
Yeah, there's no question he's gonna face shots, and, yeah, I mean, that's up to the defense and him. These are it's all learning experience. It's all new experiences for him now, so and for us to see what he can handle, like, it's just, there's no way to really know.
Yeah, I think so. But, yeah, it should be a really, interesting game for the Flyers. There's a
Mhm.
really big opportunity once again to pick up some additional points, and, with the Flyers being ahead in games played of some of the teams they're battling with, it's more important than ever for them to pick up these
Yeah,
additional
to
points
bank
so they
some
can
points, yeah.
maintain. Yeah. So as, the other teams catch up to them in the games played side of things. But there is more ahead, like I was talking about, and we're going to kind of look back at the week that was and ahead to next week's action and where the Flyers need to be. We will do that coming up next.
We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster, 93% of employers agree. Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, leveraging over 140 million qualifications, and preferences every day. Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Listeners of the Locked On Flyers will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right. No cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe. So, Russ, I think one of the nice things about this month for the Flyers is that the schedule is pretty reasonable, I
Mhm.
gotta say. You look back at this week, so they had the All-Star break and they come back and it's a 3-game week with a decent amount of rest going on in between. We don't have a back-to-back until the first couple of days of March.
Right.
And that's huge to have, solid games so you don't feel like, you're having too many days off. But at the same time, you are given opportunities to practice and rest. And I think that, this week so far, 2 of the 3 games we've played, we've gotten wins. And I just think this is a really good opportunity for the Flyers in this like 3-week stretch here, to really kind of hone in on some of the things we've been talking about that they need to work on.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good time. I'm going to suggest that next practice is going to be pretty hard on them, even after a win, because the coach isn't happy. So,
Right.
and this is that tough part of the season now where they're going to have to really, buckle down because I think I think John's hearing enough of, hey, the Flyers aren't going to try and improve that much at the trading deadline, and whatever they have, and they'll go as far as they can go. And I think, unfortunately, I think that's going to fall at the feet of the players, and John's going to push them even harder. And I don't know what will happen, when that happens. So I think we're going to start to see that now. And yeah, it'll be very interesting. And so yeah, it's good that they don't have back to backs. That'll be the one thing that'll help them.
Yeah, I think so. And I do think that you can kind of look at this 2 different ways, right? We know based on everything that Danny Briere has said and other people have said that, we're staying the course in terms of a rebuild. They're going to look for opportunities to trade away guys to get assets in return, but they're going to be smart about it. And, with the kind of trading season starting a little bit early, we're going to have to kind of be on our toes about that because something could happen, any day leading up to the trade deadline. But I do think that John Tortorella, being a coach's coach and the way that he is, he's going to see this as a teaching opportunity for the
Hmm.
Flyers in
Yeah.
terms of here's how you do a playoff push, right? Here's how
Right.
you create the culture that you need to when your team is good and playing well,
Hmm.
um, to maintain that. And I think that that's an important lesson for these guys.
Yeah. There's no question, and then that's something that they're going to face. I mean, a lot of teams behind the Flyers are going to keep winning too. Like as an example, the Islanders look like they're going to win, and so they're creeping up on the Flyers, even though the Flyers are winning. So it's like the good teams now aren't going to lose that many games down the stretch. It's just going to be the way it is. So even in a win, the coach is going to be even more critical than he was early in the year.
Yeah, I think so, and I think for good reason in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
Just because, as this team is rebuilding, you gotta learn these skills, and this will develop some leadership skills amongst the guys in the room because especially knowing the way John Tortorella is, he's going to be, and say that he's focused on this team and this Flyers group in the room, and they're shutting out all the noise of the other teams in the division, and it doesn't matter what other teams do. We're going to focus on what we do as the Flyers, right?
He
I
could
can,
say that, right? And for most games, that's true. It will not be true of the outdoor game, though, because that's the
no,
most
I
public
know.
game. It's the most public game you can have. He's not going to be able to shut it all out. He's going to have to give more access than he likes to give, and so that one's going to fly in the face of all of it.
Right, and that's what's so interesting about next week, right?
Yeah.
Perfect segue into talking about next week in the context of all this is that, you have this Kraken game that we talked about, then the Arizona Coyotes, who are, I think, a difficult team to pin down, right?
I mean, they
Sometimes,
may be in different uniforms next year, so I don't know.
yeah, we
It's
don't even know.
I mean that part's
Well,
up in the air, honestly.
yeah, that is true. But not just where they play, but in terms of how they play from game to game, right? They've been
Yeah.
playing very well a lot, but then like when they're bad, they're really bad. So I think that, it's going to be a game that looks like a trap game, but absolutely is not. And then the last game they have to play before the outdoor game is against the Toronto Maple Leafs. And that is a tough,
That's a
tough
tough one.
assignment.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Samsonov looks a little better. They're askew though. I mean, they give up a lot of
Mhm.
chances. The only thing is they're going to score a lot too, and
Yeah.
that's the challenge there is to try and keep the score down. That's not the easiest thing to do against the Leafs.
Right, and so and that's on the road too in Toronto.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
like
and
they have
again, that's another one where you can't really waltz into Toronto and expect anonymity. It doesn't work. There's going to be tons of media. Practice, there'll be tons of media. It'll be a lot more than they're used to seeing, and so, yeah, it's
Mhm.
another very public game.
Yeah, and doubly so because it's the last one before the Stadium Series game,
Right.
and everybody's gonna want to get a temperature on the Flyers and what they're looking like,
Yeah, I mean, John's
and
gonna have to
Toronto
give.
is like the exact worst place for that to
Yeah, it
happen.
probably is, and at some point, John's gonna have to divulge who the outdoor goalie is and things like that,
Mhm.
quicker than he would like, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So then that leads us right into the Stadium Series game, which we're going to talk about a lot next week as well. But there's a lot of narrative going on in this upcoming week, despite the slightly lighter schedule.
Yeah, no question. There's gonna be things coming going on, and we'll see how they handle it.
Yeah, I think that is an excellent note to end things on. That will do it for today's show. And like I said, next week we're going to talk about the Kraken game. We're going to talk our nemesis of the week and all the fun stuff leading to the Stadium Series game. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So if you've got mailbag questions, send them in via Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment over on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Have a great weekend, everyone.